As you can see by my face glistening, I didn't really bother with makeup, mostly because it's like, well, it's kind of close to like 95, 96 degrees out here. Plus these lights are freaking hot. I mean, I had to wait for this shirt to dry. So, yeah, I didn't really bother with makeup this time. And, yeah. Let's begin this episode of Romney's Reviews. And now I know what everybody is going to be asking first of is that, isn't this exactly like Olympus Has Fallen? Well, yeah, on the surface, the premise is exactly the same. A general everyman with military training, this time played by Channing Tatum, is at the right place at the right time, or wrong place at the wrong time, depending on how you interpret it, when the White House gets taken over by a group of terrorists who hope to kidnap the president. That's basically kind of where the similarities end, though, because although on the surface the premise is about the same, the changes that were made for White House Down, kind of the extra elements that Roland Emmerich injected into it, kind of make it feel a little more fleshed out and a little more developed. The reason why it was easier for me to get into it is mostly because the film devotes a great deal of time to character development. I mean, it lets us really get to know the characters, what they're dealing with, kind of their relationships to each other, and I really liked that, mostly because the characters were actually likable. However, after the film's kind of slow character development start, the next thing you'll really notice is how dated the film feels. Now, a lot of this is because of how they refer to stuff like YouTube's like, oh yeah, video blog, and, well, it's been enough of a time that people stopped referring to YouTube channels as video blogs. Well, they stopped using that terminology a couple years ago. Even the elderly don't really use that terminology anymore. And so it felt like the script was written like a couple of years ago, especially with how they were like trying to tie it with actual current events. I mean, they tried tying it to politicians acting on corporate interests as opposed to the interests of their constituents. They tried tying things to the WikiLeaks scandal, and there was even an attempt to tie it to the recent Snowden leaks, particularly because of the hacker that they kind of have depicted in the film bears an eerie resemblance to Snowden. Although that might just be me, I might be getting some facts wrong, and that might just be a happy coincidence, but I can't be the only one that notices this. Now, another thing I really have to point out is that the film, in addition to the dated feel, the film also kind of feels like it really should have come out in like the 80s, because it has a very 80s action film feel to it, mostly because it's, well, Die Hard at the White House. That said, the things that I can give the film props for is that the action scenes actually flow pretty smoothly. And I mean, it keeps me invested, and it's also just the case that the characters don't act as stupid in this film as they did in, say, Olympus Has Fallen. You don't have essentially like torture scenes of people trying to get the NORAD codes or anything. And there's actually a kind of a larger layer of depth to it where it has to kind of juggle the militaristic and political aspects of what would happen in the event of a complete takeover of the White House. It manages to strike that balance pretty well. Another thing that I also really liked is that it didn't try to beat us over the head with the whole patriotic imagery where it doesn't try to do, oh, the flag is falling. I really liked that because it really is just a case of, we already know that, well, crap's hit the fan when the White House has been taken, and so it doesn't really try to shoehorn in any of the major overblown like patriotic imagery. And I really like that because, well, when people do that in films, it feels kind of patronizing. So overall, this is a film that I actually had fun watching. Like, I liked the characters. Like, they did a good job of making the characters very endearing and likable. Although the action may seem kind of cliched and very reminiscent of the 80s, the action sequences are still very fluid and engaging. They keep you really hooked onto the story, and that combined with how the actors convey the story on screen and the fact that the characters don't have a lot of elements of stupid and are actually fairly proactive, really played to the film's strengths. The only thing that I can really knock the film on is its dated references to things like YouTube, as well as the attempts to kind of tie it to current events. I mean, I understand that Jamie Foxx is kind of taking a lot of cues from President Obama. That's unavoidable, but trying to tie it to the WikiLeaks and stuff, it's kind of the same pop cultural reference problems that the 90s films had, where they kind of try to reference things that are current and new, and didn't really work for me. That and the film is also pretty long, because the beginning is a pretty slow one, as they kind of try to slowly build things up, but it's kind of a case where if they wanted to kind of have the slow build-up, it really should have felt more like a build-up instead of really just spending a great deal of time establishing the characters. So, that said, I'm willing to give White House Down a 4 out of 5. Now, to kind of answer the question of between which film is better, Olympus Has Fallen or White House Down, I'm gonna have to kind of give it to White House Down, mostly because I had more fun watching White House Down than I did watching Olympus Has Fallen. Because, like I said, Channing Tatum just has more of an approachable presence on screen than Gerard Butler. I mean, Gerard Butler sold the Marine stuff to it, but the whole kind of like the Marine, like, he didn't really do a good job of like conveying too much of the sweet spot. That and Olympus Has Fallen felt too much like a beat-for-beat remake of Die Hard at the White House, whereas White House Down just kind of feels like it has equal parts of Olympus Has Fallen, like, not so much Olympus Has Fallen, it kind of feels like it has equal parts of Die Hard with Independence Day. And given that this is Roland Emmerich, it's no surprise. And so if you're really into like the popcorn movies like Independence Day, and you're just kind of looking for something to watch with your buddies, I recommend you check this film out. You'll get some enjoyment out of it as long as you don't really try to put too much thought into it. So that's it for this week's episode of Romney's Reviews. As for next week, since I already reviewed The Lone Ranger, I'll be taking a look at Despicable Me 2. Not really looking forward to it, to be honest, because, well, animated films have disappointed me during the past few months, so we'll see how that goes. See ya then.